And as I heard Chris and sharing his stories from over 25 years of practice, I thought, what a wealth of wisdom and knowledge that this guy brings just from having been there, done that, and having listened and scribed and supported so many diverse organizations and facilitation groups and individuals and so on in this work. So he's got some great models and tools and stories to share around this practice, the roles, responsibilities, the insights, the tips for personal and business resilience. So, Chris, can we give a big hand to Christopher Fuller?
Yay!
USA, a pioneer visual practitioner to inspire you.
Yay! I'm so excited.
Thank you, everybody.
As Tim, thank you for the introduction. Like I said, for you guys it's morning, but for me it is very late, so I'm going to add a little whiskey just to wake myself up.
Nice.
Because I don't want to get drowsy. So, first off, just before I get started, just real quick, I just want to thank the IFVP Asia community for inviting me. I'm thrilled to be here, and you know, in 1999 was the first time I went to Asia. I did the first ASC scribing work over there in Singapore for a big event. And if you would have told me that, you know, here I am now 20 something years later, 22 years later, speaking to a community of graphic facilitators, graphic recorders in Asia, I probably wouldn't have been able to foresee it. So it's really exciting. So with that, I'm going to get right into my presentation. My screen can be pinned, and you guys should be able to see it. So the what, the why, and the how. I call this Scribing Fundamentals, Principles, and Methods from me, Christopher Fuller, and my company, Griot. Things that I've learned over my, well, it's been a long time. So, I'm here, I'm speaking to you. Why should you listen to me? Who am I? What do I know? Well, like you guys, I'm a visual practitioner, and I started out as a visual arts graduate, got my degree from a university in the States called Rutgers University in New Jersey, pretty well known. And my dream was to be either a comic book artist or an animator. If you saw my remote keynote last year, you know that did not work out the way I had planned. But thankfully, as fate would have it, in 1992, I volunteered to do something called scribing that I had never heard of before for a little company called MG Taylor. And the reason why I decided to volunteer was just because when it was described to me what this job was, listening, drawing, capturing people's thoughts, it just sounded so darn interesting. I had to at least check it out. So next year marks my 30th anniversary as a professional scribe, because that volunteer job with MG Taylor led to them hiring me and me becoming a part of their core staff. So, one thing that I'd like to say that what MG Taylor did to this craft is that they took a process which up until the 90s had been what I describe as a very democratized process. And that means that the people who started it, of course, David Sibbett, you are probably familiar with his name because he is the godfather of graphic facilitation. Am I going? Oh, great. Okay, so it was very, because the graphic responsibilities and the facilitator responsibilities were combined, that made it very necessary that the graphics had to be really quick and easy to make, so that you could concentrate on the lead facilitation. But MG Taylor, they split the role between lead facilitator and the graphic responsibilities. And the knowledge workers would do the graphic job, and they called them scribes. So because you didn't have to be the lead facilitator and you could just concentrate on the visuals, you could be a little bit more adventurous than a normal graphic facilitator would. So we, in that method, got what I like to call as business famous, meaning that the big consulting companies started to discover what we were doing, because our events would end in standing ovations more often than you would just be shocked how many business meetings would just end with people clapping and this kind of thing. So Ernst & Young, a big global firm worth about $6 billion at the time in 1995, they found out about what we were doing, and they decided to license what the Taylors, Matt and Gail Taylor, were doing and globalize the process. They did that by creating what is called the ASE, Accelerated Solutions Environment. Now, at the time when I was young, because I was a person who they saw scribing, I knew that there was a small community of others out there that were doing this. Like I was very familiar with the Grove at that time, but MG Taylor, our process was something that I thought was unique to us, but I realized with the power of a big consulting company, they were able to take it and make it something that could be repeatable. And so Lee Sage, who was the senior partner at EY, on the day that we decided to partner up, he said to Matt and Gail, "Hey guys, we're going to take your environment, this unique environment that you do. We are going to train a bunch of our people to be facilitators." And then his nickname for me was Mr. Picasso. And he looked over at me with his champagne glass and he said, "And we're going to make a bunch of Mr. Picassos all over the world." And I turned to my colleague at the time, Kelvy Bird, and I was just like, I don't know if this is going to work. Which goes to show that I did not know really how big business works and what they can do to scale up. So, MG Taylor itself as a business entity might not be around, but they left a visual legacy. And that visual legacy, this is just something I scribed very quickly today. And it shows you that from the moment we partnered with the ASC, that opened the door to create a lot of other great scribes, got their first opportunities. I remember Brandy Agerback, who is just a legend now and one of the greatest entrepreneurs in our craft. She came through the ASC. Peter Duran of Alpha Chimp, who is one of the most creative and talented people. He was also one of those first scribes to come into their network. Later, Andrew Park, who, if you've ever seen an RS Animate video, the videos where you see a scribe's arm as they explain a process with the voiceover. Well, that was created by Andrew, and he got his start through the ASC. Also, Brian Kaufman, who was my mentor, he, after leaving MG Taylor, he went off on his own to become a facilitator. And that led to him making more scribes with PwC, of course, which is another big consulting firm. And probably the biggest impact is when he was consulting with Bell Canada, he introduced Lisa Sorsa and Disa Kalk of later to become ThinkLink Graphics, and that's how they got their start. So that was also through another MG Taylor alumni. And to me, I mean, Lisa and Disa, they are just masters of this craft. I jokingly call them the queens of the North because they're up there in Canada. And then, of course, my good friend and colleague, Kelvie Bird, who has had such a huge global impact on the community, especially in Asia, with her generative scribing method. If you guys aren't familiar with Kelvie, you should be. I highly recommend her book, Generative Scribing, and it is just amazing to see the new ways in which she is taking the craft. So now, graphic recording, it's really gaining in popularity, of course. Why? Well, I say thousands of people all over the world have been through a workshop using MG Taylor-like processes now, or through the ASC, or through one of its competitors. And also, those people then went off to tell other people. You know, it multiplied and multiplied all over the world. And the biggest thing that sort of was happening concurrently with that is that now there's this growing recognition of the importance of storytelling. And storytelling is the real output of what we do. We're not just graphic recorders, we're real-time visual storytellers. So, you might recognize this guy, or maybe not. My drawing, it wasn't the best, but it's a quote from Steve Jobs, The Power of Storytelling. Here's the quote. "The most powerful person in the world is the storyteller. The storyteller sets the vision, values, and agenda of an entire generation that is to come." So guys, we have an awesome responsibility. Businesses, they recognize the power of storytelling. And if you look at the business bestseller list in the States, it is just littered with books on storytelling for business and for organizations now. So, I would like to say that on this little bit of information, I, for once in my life, was ahead of the game. Because, like I said, in 1995, when I didn't realize how Ernst & Young could globalize the MG Taylor process, years later, though, I knew in 98, when I left MG Taylor, that storytelling was just something that was going to really flower. And so I started my company, Griot, with the original mission, which it still has today, which is to use the power of visualization to help organizations tell their stories. So, why did I choose that name, Griot, and what does it mean? Well, a griot is taken from West African tradition, and a griot is the tribe's storyteller. More than just a storyteller, they're the poet, the musician, the historian, the praise singer, and the storyteller. And what that means is that they keep the culture alive through an oral tradition of storytelling. And I really love that. And I decided that's what I should name my company, except instead of the oral tradition of storytelling, I am a visual storyteller, hence the name Griot. So, as I said, graphic recording, when done well, it's just a visual storytelling tool. That's why it's becoming so integral to meetings and creative problem solving. This shot that you see here, I just did a couple days ago, and it was for a big nonprofit here in California. And at the end of the session, after I had captured it, they would bring me on to tell the story of my capture about the big key themes that I heard. So, I like to think of it this way. Storytelling in business is generally thought of as a soft skill trait, but storytelling is hardwired into our humanity. And if you see in the background, I've used a cave painting because that just shows that storytelling, it's part of our DNA, guys. We're built to create and receive stories. It's how we learn. And when you take the mixture of the images and the words, there's no more powerful storytelling tool. And that is why scribing, graphic facilitation, is going to have an even greater impact in the future, because businesses are recognizing the importance of storytelling, which is what we do. So, I've told you guys about this fact that we're storytellers, but how do you go about doing it? Well, in my 30 years now of scribing, I've formulated some principles that help guide me. Think of these as just like a framework for your mindset to make sure that you are always focused on what it is that you're there to do. So, the first thing that a scribe does, I call it the what, is that it's this mindset that starts with what? It starts with listening. And it's not just listening and hearing things, it's a very specific kind of listening. It's listening without bias. It's being open. What do I mean by that? Well, a lot of times when we are capturing in a meeting, there can be people from all over the organization. The C-suite executives right down to the frontline field workers. I say that it's our duty to listen to all of those people equally, no matter what their title is. Because trust me, in my 30 years of doing this, you don't know where the good ideas are going to come from. And there is a tendency sometimes to think you have to pay more attention to the person who, with a big title and this kind of thing. But it's not that you pay more attention to them, is that you use your judgment to pay attention to people equally, because like I said, we don't know where the good ideas are going to come from. So we put aside our personal bias, and that is the first listening mindset. Now, you've done that listening, you're taking in all that data, and you've got to turn that data into some kind of organized information as you scribe. That's the next mindset principle, which I call, that's a synthesis. And what does that really mean? Well, as real-time scribes, that is our creative exploration, which is basically, at its most simplest, is that we're just looking for where the ideas converge and where they diverge. That is the processing that we do. So, as you listen, you start making connections. This is the fun part. For me, this is the fun part of the job. You start realizing, oh, this comment, that reflects back to something that was said earlier. I'm going to maybe make a connector or use a color to show some kind of synthesis or a call out. Or now they're talking about something that is completely different. This needs some sort of icon to draw attention to it in that way. That's the creative exploration. That's the fun part of the job. The last mindset principle is sharing, being of service. What do I mean by that? Well, as a speaking in the graphic recording realm, I say that our job is to be of service to the client. And what that means is that don't think of yourself as an outsider when you go to do a job with an organization to scribe. Think of yourself as being part of the group, but you just so happen to have developed this unique graphic skill ability that you can put to use to serve the group. So that will help you when you are creating your stories and you think of yourself as a member of the team that you're on, because you start thinking, okay, if I was a member of this company, of this group, what would I want captured and how would I want it to be captured? It's a great way to just stay respectful to the conversation. That's the 3 mindset principles, and that's the what I believe, in my opinion, a scribe does. So, you know the what. The next is the why. And the why, for me, there are 4 key roles and responsibilities of scribing. It's why we do our job. The first is to be a reporter. What do I mean by that? Well, as I said in the listening mindset, when you are reporting, in our job, we listen for the facts. And then, through that creative exploration that we do, we put a visual narrative around the facts. And that is being a graphic recorder, or as I like to think of myself, a graphic reporter. The next key role and responsibility is to be a mutual educator / co-educator. What do I mean by being a mutual educator? Because usually you would think I should be saying an educator, but think about it. An educator teaches people things that they don't know, but we're not like that, because first of all, we don't necessarily know the topics that we are capturing besides maybe some prep that we have done. We read the objectives and the goals that they're looking for. We know what's in scope, what's out of scope, but we are not experts on, say, blockchain or a merger and acquisition strategy, or I don't know, some project or initiative that a company is working on. But if we do that reporting job, if we listen, we can take their own ideas, their own brilliance, and show it to them by using the convergence and the divergence. And we can teach them something about something that they didn't know, but they did know. And our job is to see what people are saying. So even though we might not, be experts on the thing, by the end of it, we can teach the client something using their own knowledge, and we can learn something ourselves. The next role and responsibility is very important, and especially was sort of the cornerstone of my MG Taylor education, and that is being a visual modeler. What do I mean by being a visual modeler? Well, that means taking and creating graphic models from the discussions and the topics that you hear, which oftentimes can be a little complex, because people might be walking through a process or some kind of phased approach. And if we can turn it into a visual model, we can take something complex and make it simpler, easier to understand. For instance, I'm telling you guys about these models that I have created over my career, this four key roles and responsibility model. and I'm using, a lot of words to describe to you what that is. Some of you guys might be saying, you're using actually too many words, just get on with it. Well, this model that you see here on the screen, when I'm done talking, you'll have an easier chance remembering what I said because you'll have this visual model to make the connection back to the details. So that is what I mean by being a visual modeler. Now, the next role is one where I've probably lived in the most in my career, and that is being an inspirer. What do I mean by being an inspirer? Well, this is the really fun part, because when you are listening to a conversation, people, because like I said, we are natural storytellers, we have storytelling built into our DNA, and so when people want to be, when they want to explain a topic, when they want to make sure that an idea hits home, they speak in metaphor. They use parables. They use comparisons and allegories. And when they use these metaphors, that is a perfect opportunity for us to visualize their ideas. And this can really inspire a group. For instance, you guys, if you've ever been in a business meeting, you probably realize how many times they might describe the project that they're working on is like being on some kind of journey. And of course, that is an opportunity for us to take and turn that into, maybe a mountain or a series of mountains or a road or an ocean, a vessel, or perhaps, especially when it's a lot of males in the room, they love to use sports metaphors. So we can pick up on that when they're talking about like achieving their goals. Maybe we're drawing, soccer or football or something like that. A lot of times, these inspirational things that we do, these drawings that we do in the moment, can have a bigger life beyond the conversation in which they first occurred in. What I'm showing you right now, this is an inspirational metaphor that I created in real time for an automotive company. Now, in this particular company, the issue was that their marketing and their engineering side they were too siloed, and they weren't integrated. They felt as if the marketing and branding and the guys who built the cars weren't speaking the same language, and so this was a major issue. During this very intense conversation, this topic came up again, and one of the participants said that the problem was that the marketing and the science and the engineering guys, they needed to be in a dance together. So when I heard that sent some lights went off, and I started thinking, okay, a dance. What kind of dance? Well, it's got to be, of course, a partner dance. And so I started thinking about, ballroom dancing, old black and white movies where people were, just very elegant, and the lead would go back and forth between the two people dancing. And so I sketched that up and started, capturing the other comments around it that reinforced it. And when I did that, there was some electricity almost going on in the room, and that I could sense that the participants were picking up on what I had seen, because in this graphic recording, way that I was doing it. I was doing it on this big dry erase wall in front of, it was about 80 participants, and I was drawing big so everybody could see it. And because of that, it started to inspire them. They started to get more creative. They said that, later they said, innovation, that's got to be the underlying platform to what they do. So if you look at the drawing, you'll see on that left-hand side of it that the two dancers, I put them on a platform that is innovation. Later on in the conversation, they said that they had to take more risk because as an automotive company, you always have to be thinking about the future. And so when they said that about taking more risk, one of the participants made a comment that innovation happens at the edge. And so I drew the two dancers dipping right over the edge. It was, by the time the conversation was done, guys, the room was just they had come into that conversation feeling a little down. They left that conversation to go into their breakouts just really charged up from there on out. It was a great meeting. I got so much feedback from the participants and from the sponsor, who personally congratulated me for creating this metaphor. But I said, well, my job was easy. You guys came up with the idea. I just visualized it. That is what it means to inspire a group. So I've told you about these, the mindset, and I've told you about the reasons why we do what we do, and now it's the how. So I have 6 storytelling fundamentals of scribing. They are, first and foremost, simply annotation. Annotation, it's just words, text. Then, of course, actors. What are actors? Actors are all the drawings, the icons, the symbols that you use, the visuals, to help tell the story. Sometimes it's cartooning and elaborate, but that's not really what scribing is all about. The reason why the dance that I just showed you looked like that is because my background was, like I said, I wanted to be an animator and illustrator, but you can be a powerful scribe without being a quote-unquote drawer. I just want to make sure that gets through to you, because Brian Kaufman, that person that I showed you that was my mentor at MG Taylor, Brian was an engineer by trade and could not draw Spider-Man to save his life. But he, to me, was the greatest scribe that ever lived. So yes, actors, the little icons, the tools, the drawings to help tell your story. Then there are frames. What do I mean by frames? Well, if we're just writing everything down, but not somehow giving our drawings cohesion, and in this case, with framing devices, then it just becomes, it's too much to take in. So Kelby likes to call this chunking. You chunk the ideas to make it digestible. Without framing, then you're basically just making graffiti. The next fundamental is relationships, and that's a little connected to framing in that it shows how ideas connect to each other, and this can be through arrows, this can be through color, this can be through dashed lines. It's just anything to help show that convergence or divergence. The next fundamental is titles and subheaders. Because remember, guys, we are storytellers. We're visual storytellers. And when you're telling a story, it helps if you give your story a title And it helps if you give the chapters, the chunking, the frames, the relationships, a subheader. So I like to be really intentional when I do that because it makes it just that much easier for people to understand the scribing. The final storytelling fundamental is placement and flow. This isn't always visibly seen. It's not always something that you're physically drawing. Sometimes it is, like I said, it's just where you place your ideas next to each other. Another way of building on a relationship. This is my three models, the what, the why, and the how, all working together, integrated. I'm going to show you an example of an analog scribe that I did, old school paperboard and markers. So this was done on a piece of foam core. It's 40 by, I think, 60 inches. I don't know what that is in metric because I'm an American and we have a poor education system. But I did this live. Now, take a look at it. Do you recognize any of the things that I talked about? Because when you look at it now, when you break it down, you'll see it's just the frames to make the visual model that is happening in the middle. The annotation, which is all the text, all the titles, the subheaders that you see going on. Whoops. And placement and flow. And of course the actors, which are just the little cartoons. So that was an analog scribe. But because of the times that we're in, I'm going to show you guys. Ooh, I went a little too far. Got ahead of myself. This was a digital scribe capturing a conversation by Fareed Zakaria, excuse me. It was done with the iPad, and you'll notice once again there are frames, placement and flow, titles and subheaders, actors, all of that working together. Why did I do that? Because he was talking a long time and about a lot of big, important topics, pandemic themes. So I used green to put that in a frame, geopolitical issues, the global economy, social and cultural issues. If that 6 fundamentals is too detailed, I have created kind of a 101 how model which I call the Simplified starter model, and it's the facts. And the facts are just frames, actors, connectors, text equals the visual story. So I just did this 2 days ago for a remote conference with a client. That was the one that I showed you earlier, where at the end I had to then go on and talk to the participants about what I had heard. Using the facts, the simple, you'll see, once again, the ingredients are really pretty simple, and that's what I love about this, is that you can take these basic ingredients and you can create your own personalized way of doing this role. So, what you see here, speaking of your own personal way, this was done from my IFVP remote keynote last year by a scribe named Sabina Soda. I hope I pronounced her name right. But I absolutely loved it, because one, it's a mixed media piece, right? She's using photos. She pulled some things from my website. but it is still a real-time visual story, and it still adheres to all the basic ingredients. In this case, though, the actor, though, it's a photo. It's not a drawing. But then she's combined that with some drawings, of course. She's used framing to make the ideals digestible that I was talking about. And of course, there are connectors and placement and flow. Love that piece. So, the vision for our visual practice, where we might be headed. Well, considering that I was the guy in 1995 who did not think that MG Taylor's process could be duplicated, I'm probably not the best person to answer a question about where we're headed for the future, but I do have some ideas. Number one, the remote work is going to continue to evolve, of course, and I see that in the future being in the VR space, virtual reality, because meetings will be happening there, augmented reality. And as part of that, I think there's going to be even more mixed media used in graphic recording, more photos, maybe music, maybe other audio used to help tell these stories. Also, graphic recording techniques will continue to be seen in non-traditional ways, so more in the entertainment field, more marketers will bring graphic facilitators on to help ideate. And then of course, more use of scribing to work on big systemic issues, environmental issues, social justice issues, because let's face it, there are some big, wicked problems ahead of us. And therefore, I believe that scribing can be a powerful tool in that arena. And my colleague, Kelby Bird, that is where she is really has been such a pioneer and such an innovator with her treating scribing as a social art. So, the last vision I see is that there's going to be some kind of degrees, certification. There is already sprinkling with this, but it's going to be, more importantly, it's going to have legitimacy behind it. So, on that note, let you guys know of some learning opportunities that I will be offering online, my next course, because since I can't travel and teach this kind of stuff anymore, I'm putting together an online course to go over this methodology in more detail. You can register for the Griot's Eye mailing list to stay in the know for when that's offered. Just go to my site, griotseye.com/contact, and you can put in your information there. Everybody, the earlier that you register, of course, you will receive a discount on the course. And I can definitely put something in there for IFVP members. I hope you guys can be a part of my upcoming online series. And in the meantime, I write quite a bit about scribing and the craft. And so if you go to my page, my Griot's Eye page, and click the Insights tab, you'll find a bunch of just different insights and learnings that I have accumulated over my 30 years of doing this job. That's it. That's my story. And I think we might have a little bit of time, I think maybe for some questions, maybe? Tim? Thank you.
To just
Thank you.
hear the breadth of your experience, the insights, the clarity that you get around this practice, and the roles, the responsibilities, the how, the what, the why, and how you articulate that so clearly. It gives hope, and it gives purpose, and it gives vision to what we're doing here. In our our own small ways in small rooms or big rooms, sitting and listening and drawing. But there's such a big opportunity and purpose. Can we come off mute and give a big cheer for Chris for a moment? Just to acknowledge that. Woo!
Thank you. I'm humbled. I'm humbled.
Thank you.
Some
That's
people
awesome.
say I need
So
to
we
be.
have some time. So no one's gonna chase you on Facebook, Chris. But I do encourage you. He does have some great stuff on his website that he writes regularly, as he mentioned. And those of you that are interested to go deeper into this stuff, if you're inspired and curious, which I know I am, and I think we all are, go and check out his stuff. And he has some online courses. I had a chance to learn with him a little bit in his session in Bali at the Happening, and he's articulating these roles, but going a little bit deeper into it. It's a workshop, so you're drawing stuff and modeling some of the tools that he's sharing. But we have some questions, and we have a bit of time for some questions. So,
Tim, can I share screen
yes.
while you facilitating the Q&A session? Like,
yes,
our graphic recorder already made some recording.
Yes,
wow,
awesome.
Yeah,
I love it. Real time.
Let's have a look at the work in progress. Very nice.
Oh, this is
Look at that.
fabulous. I love it.
I love it.
yeah. And
Another one for your collection, Chris.
Whose
We have
name?
some
Because I'd like to get some of these.
We'll send it all to you. Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah, we'll send it to you. Yeah.
Nice.
It's got it. It's got the I see the titles and the subheaders.
It's not done.
Calling out the the topics. It's great.
Yeah.
It's a visual story.
It's not done.
That's awesome.
fully.
I love it. The key roles.
Yes.
Yeah. And Tim, I already copy paste some questions from the audience here for you.
Fantastic. Okay, can we see the questions?
Yes.
So-
on the board.
Okay, so what is the best thing about being a visual storyteller to you, Chris?
What is the best thing about being? Well, it has to have some kind of allure because I've been doing it so long that I should probably be ashamed of myself if I didn't like it. The best thing about it for me is the fact that I am constantly being educated on new topics. You know, I've now worked. I've worked on 5 continents. Like I said, some countries that I don't even remember. I was like, oh, wow, I was there. My passport book says I was there. And I have been able to just learn so much because of the different industries, the people that I've met. And so if you're someone that values learning, that values experiences, there's to me, no better job in the world.
Nice. I love that. Yeah, we're constantly learning. And, in the other part, when we teach this work, which many of us will do, we teach sketchnoting because that's the challenge is that you need to integrate existing information with the new ideas. And that's the challenging part of synthesis that is hard, is translating that. But in doing that, we make the learning stick. So we're doing that live in the room and you're learning so much.
Yes.
That's awesome.
Another
question is what should...
No, I'll take another question before.
Yeah. Oh, here's a question. What should we prepare before a real-time visual facilitation?
The way I like to
That's a
prepare
basic question, but
is first off, I want to know as much as I can. So I will ask the client, I need to know your objectives. I need to know what is in scope for you guys and what is out of scope, because sometimes some things might come up that are out of the scope of the conversation. And so it's good to know that beforehand. If I am working with a technical company, working on a very specific project, then I'll ask them maybe if they can just give me a list of acronyms that might come up. And then I if I'm capturing speakers and presentations, I like to read their bios. I like to know what they are about. To me, that's the real thing that you do to prep. The other stuff, of course, you've got to pick your color palette because you don't want to have too many colors. You've got to do some other technical things, but it's the reading to me, that is the biggest thing.
Nice. Yes, I like asking questions. I mean, that's part of the preparation, but it's also, in a way, you're doing consulting is by understanding what's their objective and what they want to do with that group and with that opportunity. And the scribing helps that. And for me, the ability to be able to articulate what we do back to the client, then we're becoming, as you said, an educator, a co-educator.
Yes.
We're creating more value for them than just the picture. So for those of you in some of the Asian markets, I know Jillian in Conversations talks about this in Korea. There's a bit of a perception about visual facilitation that it's just illustration based. You're just making pictures, and that sort of devalues the work that you're doing, because it's not about the picture, it's about the thinking and what that goes into to help move the group forward. So I guess what I would suggest or try to help everybody to think about is how can you articulate the work that you're doing better, the value that you bring. It's not just a drawing, it's the thinking and the synthesis. And Chris, it's awesome. And you articulated that so well. Yeah, information piece, the modeling, the thought partner, the co-educator. Great, we have so many questions, my goodness. How do we take them all? Chun, do you see any that's standing out as you're harvesting them?
I suggest that we will recap all the questions and we will send it to Chris later on.
I can pick out a couple. That? How about this? Just real quick, like I see. Okay, how do you?
That stands out to you, Chris?
Well, yeah, I see one because it's a technical one, and so it's the simplest one to answer. How do you, inside the screen, how am I doing this kind of thing? I use a program called Ecamm. It's a Mac. Yeah. Unfortunately, it's a Mac only. It's not a PC program now. It might be in the future, but that is what I use to do this kind of on-the-fly video editing. There is a PC competitor called Minicam that people use. I know Kelvy, I know she uses Minicam. So there is, if you're looking to do this and you don't have a Mac, just know that there are things that you can find on the PC side.
Yeah.
The Griot context. Have you ever experienced or know about other experiences working as a scribe communities that cannot read or using other fundamentals other than annotation? It's funny that you say that. Part of the reason, yes, I took the name Griot's Eye because it was a West African word, and I was kind of familiar with it. I knew it had something to do with storytelling, but also, if I don't know how many of you guys are familiar with a man by the name of Rob Evans. Rob Evans was the head of the Ernst & Young ASC, and Rob, just a real genius on so many topics, but Rob had this friend of his that he would bring to our early design shops, a guy by the name of Brother Blue. Blue unfortunately has since passed, but Blue was a griot. He was an actual living griot, and he would go to organizations, listen in to what they were talking about, and create these almost lyrical stories rather quickly. Sometimes with just like somebody playing a conga drum, which was usually Rob. And I remember he came to an early design shop. This was when I was still working at MG Taylor. And hearing him basically do facilitation, but in the form of simply just storytelling, I was just like, oh, wow, Griot, yeah. And it's stuck in my head, right? Even though I did know of a Griot before seeing Blue, but Blue was a reminder. And so when I went off to create my own company, yeah, it was the easy choice.
Nice. That's awesome. There's so many great insights and questions here. Does anyone have a burning question that they want to come off the mic and ask to Chris? Because we see a lot. This is great, actually, all these questions. Thank you, everyone, for the questions.
I remember when the IFVP started, guys. That's how long I've been doing this.
I wasn't born yet.
My colleague, yeah, I should say I've been doing this 30 years, but I started. I was 5 years old. Matt Taylor found me in a sandbox. Actually, I was just drawing. I was finger painting. I used to finger paint. That's how I did it, just as a child. Yes.
Nice, I bet.
The scribing.
So there's some inspiration.
It keeps you young, guys. If you continue on this, look at me. It's the elixir of youth.
Here's a question from Ho Kim in Seoul. As a non-visual facilitator, when we engage graphic recorders or facilitators for virtual or offline sessions, what are the best ways to work with them to create maximum value of them and the workshop participants? So this is about how you partner and collaborate.
Yeah, how you collaborate, let's say with a lead facilitator.
With a scribe.
It's always great, first off to, you try to form some kind of relationship with them and let them know that as I'm going to be managing this conversation to help you do your job better, I'm going to do some synthesis and my speaking. So the lead facilitator should let the graphic recorder know that they're going to give them some cues, things to perk up and keep your ear at, because sometimes, you're hearing all these different comments coming in, and if you are a complete outsider, you might have a tougher time, especially when you're just starting out, how to suss out, what is valuable. Working with a great lead facilitator, if you have a great rapport with them, that's makes your job that much simpler to do.
That's awesome. That's great. Yeah, so that's about being, as a facilitator, it's about having confidence in your role and clarity, and then articulating what you're going to be doing. Again, how do you articulate that to create the value in the relationship, and ask for what you need, right? Yeah. I often ask
create a rapport.
The create rapport. I often ask them, I just try to find space, and facilitators are busy, but I say, is there a story that you're going to tell?
Exactly.
Is there a metaphor that you're going to be, using to help people understand this? Because a good presenter will have these things in there, and they might not really be thinking about it because it's just part of what's natural. But I ask that to sort of get to know it, and then that could become that framing element, storyteller, or key image that builds the whole thing, like the dance, like you mentioned the story about the dance. Be like a dancer and be at the edge. So those are little tips to give you an insight into doing that. Wow, Chris, there's so many cool inspirations. Here's just a few things. Be an inspirer. Innovation happens at the edge.
Happens at
Visual
the edge.
Metaphors. We can teach them something that they didn't know yet. I love that.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. But what it really is that we show them. They knew it, but they didn't realize they knew it, is what I meant to say. You know what I'm saying?
They know it.
And so just when we start making the connections, all of a sudden it's like, oh yeah, yeah.
And here's a little gift for you.
Mr.
I'm sure
Picasso.
our ref recorder did a bad job with that.
hey. But this is what, like I said, one of the things that I almost regret, or not regret, but when Ernst & Young saw me, because before me, scribes, they weren't illustrators, they didn't have art backgrounds. Most of those guys came from organizational development. Like I said, Brian Kaufman was an engineer. So it's all, very simple. And that is, like I said, that is the most powerful way to do this, especially in graphic facilitation. But when EY saw me, they said, we want a bunch of cartoonists. And that's when, if you guys are hearing people say like, it's about making a pretty picture. The pretty picture is just so happens, that's the icing on the cake, but it's not, there are no calories in that. And so, guys, don't worry about, like, if you can't draw fancy, you can still be a tremendous scribe using, even if you can't draw Spider-Man,
Nice. Wow, thank you, Chris. There's so many cool inspirations. Can I just invite everyone, just type in one key takeaway from Chris into the chat, so we can just capture that quickly, and then we're going to wrap up for this session. What's one key takeaway that you are most inspired by and value? Oh, I love it. Listen without bias.
Mm.
Yes, inspiration. It's not just the visuals. You know, I always say it's not about the drawing, it's about the idea. What's
Yes.
the visual help you to get done? And in that way, it's a gift. Every drawing is a gift, right?
Yep.
Thank you. Thinking not just visual, great inspiration, visual storytelling. This is awesome. Wow, what are we going to do? Thank you so much, Chris. Can we just give a...
Thank you, guys.
Did we get enough screenshots of you and with you and of everyone? This is awesome. So I hope, and this is an invitation to everyone here, is whatever you're inspired by, Chris, is to share with him. You know, go to his not Facebook, his other things, and share with him, and go onto our mural
Join the
board.
mailing list.
Join a mailing list. Go into our board and share if there's some drawings or some notes that you take from his session to add that to this learning community. And I'm sure Chris will be happy to see that when we share those resources
Instagram too. I look at Instagram a lot. Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. And so, you know, be a storyteller. Add whatever drawings you're doing. Add it to your social, you know,
Personalize
sharing. Yeah, personalize it, and that helps to build this community and build the value of what you do, and especially if you're an aspiring, you know, scribe, visual practitioner. This is great.